Mr. Burnham.
Yep. Oh, we should be done before 7 because there's another panel supposed to be here at 7. So I'm thinking 6:50 or so.
We have to leave at 6:45.
Okay.
Cosplay contest.
All right. So I guess
Look, those are awesome.
we're all here for the same thing, which is the Pokemon panel, right?
I was fine too.
That show worked very nicely over in The Walking Dead, so I figured I'd recycle it here. Savannah, where are you going?
She's.
Oh,
It's the Pokemon.
ask permission. Leave my class, Savannah. Okay, well, my name is Chris Burnham, and I run the Tulsa Doctor Who Viewing Society. Why did that go over?
Here.
There we go. I run the Tulsa Doctor Who Viewing Society, which meets twice a month right now at the Hardesty Library on Saturdays from 1 to 5. We show classic Doctor Who as well as the new episodes when they come in, and other British science fiction shows. And we ask that everybody who is here, if you're not already a member of the Tulsa Doctor Who Viewing Society Facebook page, look for Tulsa Doctor Who Viewing Society on Facebook. Like us or join the group. It's a group. It's not a like page. Just ask to join the group, and that way we can keep you up to date on all these type of lovely things that are happening.
You get lots of invites.
I have 3 henchmen, associates here that are going to help me out, and I'll let them quickly introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Ogre.
Hi, I'm Jill, the only person who can shout and glare down the ogre.
My wife's not here.
Okay, the only other person.
And I'm Jay. I'm really tired, so bear with me here, guys.
So, this is a panel, as the title slide says here, about what I love and hate, what we love and hate about Doctor Who. Because, obviously, we love Doctor Who. Everybody who's here enjoys the show, right? We all love the show. Ogre and I invented a panel that documented how many doctors there actually are in the show. We're actually, I think, up to 28. I think that's a different panel. We're just going to stick with the basic 13 that you have here. The 12 that are numerical plus the War Doctor. And the intention of this panel is to go through them and identify at least one thing that we like about the show, about that particular Doctor, or if not the Doctor themselves, at least their era on the show, and at least one thing that we dislike. Because normally, when you talk to fans, they think, oh yeah, especially for Doctor, oh yeah, so-and-so is my favorite Doctor, and so-and-so, I hate this particular Doctor, but they never really go into why. And I was thinking about this one day, why do I like the Doctors I like, and don't like the Doctors that I don't like, and why I'm kind of neutral on several of them, as much as I love the show. So, let's start at the beginning.
Well, before you change the page,
Okay.
I do have one thing I want to say.
Okay.
This is a little bit of an educational thing. There are 2 generations of Doctor Who fans. There's some who say, this is the first Doctor.
Oh,
Wonder
my.
who the hell these guys are. Then there are those of us that know this is the first Doctor and wonder what those other ones are smoking.
We call the former ones idiots.
Or new fans, if you're trying to be politically correct. But we
No,
start.
they're new fans if they're at least curious about the original 7.
We start with the first one. William Hartnell, 1963, originated the role. And initially, you have to understand that Doctor Who was supposed to be an educational show. It was a show designed to teach science and history
And child dangers.
Most of the shock and horror of the youngsters in the front.
It was a history show.
Yes.
A science show!
Yes!
So the science fiction aspects, the bug-eyed monsters and things were always intended to be secondary, and yet they're exactly what saved the show. Because if all the stories had been like the first 4-part serial, Doctor Who probably wouldn't have made it past 13 episodes.
Oh my God, they're making me learn!
So, first Doctor. What do I like about the first Doctor? I like the fact that he started the role. That you have somebody who we can look at every other Doctor and we can see some aspect of this guy in there. Because they all ultimately draw to him. They all look back at some level, whether consciously or unconsciously. And most people will say conscious. Most of the actors will say, we look to Bill Hartnell because he starts the role, and we try to find something to incorporate into ourselves with that particular character. we like? Anybody else with something we like?
Well, again, love that he started the party. Kind of hate that the actor himself was so against the bug-eyed monsters. I love the bug-eyed monsters.
Yeah, the bug-eyed monsters are important. It's true.
Okay. What I liked about him was that he was very smart, possibly the smartest doctor of all. Like if you've seen the 3 doctors or 5 doctors.
This is true. If you have seen the 3 or 4 or 5 doctors and you really pay attention to the way that the story is written, you'll notice that the first doctor is always the one to solve the problems. All the other doctors turn to him. They actually defer to him. They recognize he's the original, and therefore he's the one who somehow still has all the knowledge, even though they're technically older and theoretically should be more wiser. Whatever.
Well, you also have to remember, this is the first doctor that went up and defeated the Daleks.
Oh, really? Those guys? Okay, I have a slide for you. You didn't even know that. Good segue, Ogre. Awesome. Yeah, an old man against the most terrifying force of egg beaters and sink plungers in the universe, and yet he's able to outsmart them time and time again. Yes. Good stuff here. Whoops, sorry, too far. Dislikes? Well,
Child endangerment.
child endangerment, yeah.
Okay, reason I say child endangerment, his first companion was not a young adult. It was a little girl, his own granddaughter. He drug along when he stole a TARDIS,
His high school.
or got kidnapped by a TARDIS. We're still trying to debate which one that actually happened.
They stole each other. Moving on. Right.
Also, he's not necessarily the most physically vital of the doctors. In fact, I would say probably the least physically vital of any of the doctors, which makes it a little difficult when you're watching the stories, because that's why you have to have the male companions during his era. They do the fighting for him. Hartnell was, he did the thinking and the shouting, and was generally kind of gruff, and all the other people kind of went along, which is a pretty big discrepancy from the second Doctor.
Who rated the Three Stooges haircuts for something for his head.
Pat Troughton in 1966 comes to the role because Bill Hartnell's health is failing, and rather than cancel the show because it was generally popular, they decided to create this concept of regeneration, which is what allowed the show to survive for 50 years plus now. And Pat Troughton was a character actor. Pat Troughton decided to make the role completely his own and be a very, very different Doctor. What do we like about Pat? I like the fact that he is very funny. Actually, I should say I like the fact that he's very different from Bill. He's very funny. He is deceptively smart. He at one point makes a line about how something along the lines of how people will underestimate an enemy that they don't think is as intelligent as they are, and they'll overlook it. So he plays dumb, and I like that. It's a good character trait.
Wasn't that in the Cybermen?
I think it was actually the Dominators.
What I love about him is that since he is the first Doctor following the originator, he gets to establish the fact that the Doctor's personality can be so completely different after a regeneration.
What I liked about him is he had many sides to him. He could be a scared, confident, funny, serious. He was all over the place. And I like the way he kind of mouthed off to people sometimes too, in his own smart aleck way.
Oh my word.
He was the jester of the Doctors. He's the one who would take something, make it funny, and go on.
What I dislike? Well, more than any other Doctor, his stories are really, really missing huge chunks, large chunks. And we're going to come to questions from the audience at a later point, but we'll get there. Yeah, it's sad, because I think maybe we, as a modern audience who didn't grow up and didn't get the opportunity to see Pat's episodes live as they were transmitted, I think maybe we miss out on exactly a lot of what his Doctor was about. Because yes, there are audios, and yes, there are recons for those who are familiar with those things, but they only give you a certain level of understanding of the character. And since we just recently recovered one complete story and almost another complete story, it's opened up an opportunity to see more of his ability to play this character. And there's a lot that I remember growing up. We only had like 5 stories of his that were complete, and there's a whole different depth of character to him in some of his earlier stories. So I think this is an unfortunate situation when it comes to him, and one of the things I don't like about it's not the Doctor himself, but just his era in the show. One other thing I do like, oh look, Zoe's butt.
Yeah.
You know, without Doctor Who, you wouldn't have shots like that. Then you get color, and you get a brand new, yeah,
Favorite.
1970. They were going to cancel Doctor Who. After 1969, the ratings were sinking. Pat Troutman wanted to leave. It looked like the end of the show, and they decided to give it one more series, bump up the budget, reduce the number of episodes, and make it in color. And they needed someone to take the role over, and so we get John Pertwee, who's the 3rd Doctor. This was the first Doctor that I saw when I knew I was watching Doctor Who. I actually saw Peter Davison first, but I tuned in halfway through an episode and I had no idea what I was watching, and it was very confusing. But this was the first guy I saw who I knew was the Doctor. What do I like about him? He's a man of action. He's a Doctor who's a very James Bond, super genius kind of guy. And I really like his relationship with the Brigadier. I like his relationship with a lot of his supporting characters, but I really like it with the Brigadier, as well as later on with Sarah Jane.
Venusian judo.
Yes.
I loved that. That was hysterical. The fact that he could be so funny in the midst of being incredibly violent. He was the first physically violent Doctor.
Yeah,
But he had a wardrobe that was the dandiest.
Oh.
He had style.
He has velvets and lace, and he can kick your butt.
That is a silk tie.
He more capes.
Jay, I think you wanted to address
Yeah, one of my favorite things about him was he was probably the best of all the Doctors at building gadgets and fixing them.
And that's a true, actual trait of John Pertwee's as well. Pertwee loved to tinker with stuff. He loved to incorporate building things, and he always wanted to have something on set that he could be fiddling with while he's doing his lines and doing his scenes, because it just was something he enjoyed doing a lot. Now, as far as bad aspects of the 3rd Doctor, he is actually, the Doctor is, I think most of us would agree that the Doctor is supposed to be an outsider. He's someone who clashes with the establishment and who wants to stick up for the little guy. The 3rd Doctor is actually a member of the establishment. If you watch his shows, he talks about hanging out in these social clubs on Earth, and he talks about, you know, elbowing with upper class people, and while he has an issue with the military and with the way that humanity kind of in general treats outsider peoples, he presents himself as much more in line with the establishment than any other Doctor ever would.
He's a genteel.
He's a frickin' aristocrat.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's still in the payroll.
Yeah, he is. Jay, I know you wanted to talk about.
Okay, the only dislike I could think of for John Pertwee was that they used the Master too much. I mean, I'm glad they introduced the Master. It's a great character, but I thought they used him too much in his era.
You have a whole season.
Well, it didn't help that they were best friends.
And that's true. They were, you know, Roger Delgado and John Pertwee were very close friends.
Okay, I have to remind people one thing. This series started in the 70s.
60s. Or, no, not him?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, him, 1970, yeah.
Okay. They call season series over here, so.
Yeah.
When we get color, we realize one thing. The TARDIS has been decorated for the 70s this entire time. It is avocado green. And you can't tell it because green and black and white is nice and bright and white. Then we see it in color, it's like, oh my God, it's guacamole.
Good God, my grandmother's kitchen exploded all over the place.
Now, if you look at these 3, you'll see that they are, you know, you have the first 3 Doctors here. This is a publicity shot from the three Doctors, which was the 10th anniversary show. But you know, John stands out a little bit because of his wardrobe, but generally you can sum up, physically, you can sum up the Doctor as above middle-aged, probably grumpy at times, and sort of a fatherly figure. Okay, I mean,
Cranky
after all,
old
he's got a
man.
relationship here with Sarah Jane. He obviously has one. I really like Sarah Jane. If we didn't have the 3rd Doctor, we wouldn't have Sarah Jane. But same with Joe. And you have that father figure relationship. And then you get this. For most of you who are our age, or who had parents who watched this show, this was their doctor. This was the doctor that became popular here in America. They actually showed John's stories in like the Northeast, but he was never as popular as Tom Baker domestically. And so, yeah, in 1975, we get this massive event called Tom Baker, who takes the show and will be, for so many people, the doctor. Has the role for 7 years, longer than anybody else. What do I like about Tom? He is so unique. He is so eccentric. His doctor, more so than any others previous to him, I think, is so eccentric, and I say a lot. And he brings a bigger awareness internationally to the role than any of his predecessors had done.
For decades to follow. You say Doctor Who, and they only present him. Ask the Simpsons.
Futurama. James.
He was the first of the doctors to approach a moral dilemma and hesitate.
Yeah.
I touch these two wires together and I end the Dalek race. Do I have the right?
And we're all going, do it.
And he doesn't. Because that would make him worse than the Daleks.
Even though he's already done it several times. I mean, he wiped out several times. He's already wiped out several times.
He's never tried to eliminate the entire race. He simply tried to defeat them.
This
is genocide.
Yeah.
This would have killed the entire species, not just sent them all packing back to their little planet in the back corners of nowhere. This would have annihilated the species, and he chose not to do it.
Well, they were bees.
Yeah, proto-embryo. Jay?
Okay, they pretty much talked on everything I had written down. I mean, I liked him because he's very entertaining. He had a godlike voice. He was smart, witty, he had charisma, was half mad and funny. All in one.
Part of that godlike voice was part of the godlike ego that came with Tom Baker, but
That's a different issue. Yeah, K9.
Yes.
I do not like Kane. I think he's really annoying.
Well, there's always minorities who feel that way, and John Nathan Turner felt that way for certain because he wanted to get rid of when he took this control of the show, he had K9 break down all the time. But we have K9 now. Since you bring up annoying companions, oh look, it's Adric.
Alex is not good to do.
They kept him on too long.
I have a great deal of distaste for Adric as a companion. I've met Matthew Waterhouse. I don't have a problem with Matthew Waterhouse. He's a pretty entertaining guy. But Adric as a character annoys me to no end. However, Adric with Tom was less annoying because Tom was still in the father figure relationship with Adric, whereas Peter would be the big brother and there would be that sibling rivalry thing going on. But you have Tom here that could be the kind of father figure. So for 7 years, you had that. Oh yeah.
let's work this out bluntly. Allow me to introduce Wesley Crusher 1.0.
I like Wesley Crusher too. Wesley Crusher is one of my favorite Star Trek characters. He's a lot better than
I
Counselor
love that we have the vocal minority here. It's great.
Hey,
It's always fun.
I like him a lot more than Counselor Obvious.
The Counselor Obvious has some nice things about it.
Intergalactic cheerleader, but that's another panel.
Okay.
But me too.
So then we move on to 5. After 7 years, you get Peter Davison. Peter Davison is my favorite doctor.
The first of the pretty boy doctors.
And the primary reason that I like him is because he is the most human. He's the most fallible. I don't like my doctor being the omniscient God. And 3 out of the 4 previous ones basically were the omniscient God. Pat Troughton was not so. Or if he was, he played it in such a way that he looked like he wasn't. That whole make yourself look stupider so your enemies don't will underestimate you thing. But all the others basically play themselves as omniscient gods. Peter is extremely fallible. Peter makes a lot of mistakes. And I appreciated that particular fact. Like I said, we'll take questions later on. We'll get, Peter is someone who could very easily be a normal human being. Of course, Peter did keep Adric around, which frustrated me. In fact, to be perfectly honest with you, the whole companions that they gave Peter to begin with, which all started with Tom, except for Nissa, most of Peter's companions are really, really annoying to me.
You got Wesley Crusher, you got Deanna Troy, and then you've got
Beverly.
Beverly.
Yeah.
What are you calling Beverly? What are you calling Deanna?
Nissa.
Nissa is Beverly.
Definitely.
This is Beverly?
Yeah. And the other thing is,
Tegan's not Troy.
I would
I never
know.
put
she
Tegan
crashed
in
the TARDIS.
Tegan is the
Oh,
one.
she crashed the TARDIS, yes, but she's not a mouth. Troy's not a mouth on legs. I mean, even Tina calls herself a mouth on legs. And then you
Deanna
get
crashes the Enterprise. You put her in charge of the Enterprise. Two movies. She crashes it both times.
Yeah.
You put
Good point.
her in piloting the TARDIS, and she crashes the TARDIS.
And then you get Turlo, who wants to kill the Doctor. And then you get Chameleon, which is a malfunctioning thing that they build as a prop, and then the guy who built it died, and they could never figure out how to make it work.
Chameleon.
And then you redeem yourself with Perry. Perry has a couple of nice things about it. Okay, so
As impressive as Perry's qualifications are, I was not amused.
But we'll get more to Perry in a moment because she has an interesting relationship with 6, and she's there more than with 5. Things we like about, I'll back up so we don't have to stare at Perry's bosom. Back up to things we like about 5.
After your question,
Well,
I like that he had hobbies. I mean, the guy goes off and plays cricket for
yeah,
fun.
it's true.
He wears a decorative vegetable.
Yes.
Which is all that celery really should be. For any of us who've actually eaten celery, it's not eaten. It's really a decorative thing.
It's a method by which to get peanut butter to your mouth.
Yeah.
Or
Or cream cheese.
do the same thing.
One thing we have to say about this gentleman here, though, how many of you know anything about the actors of Doctor Who? I'd like to introduce you to not only the Doctor, but the Doctor's father-in-law, and the grandfather of the Doctor's baby.
Jenny. Jenny is Peter Davidson's daughter, the doctor's daughter. She
Yes.
really is the doctor's daughter.
Yes,
We're actually right.
exactly.
Go
The
ahead.
Doctor's daughter is actually the Doctor's daughter. The Doctor's daughter married the Doctor and produced the Doctor's granddaughter.
Okay, moving
Welcome to
on
Dr.
to
Who.
Susan.
Your likes and dislikes.
What I liked, I just liked his sincerity in general. My dislike was how he didn't have a 4th season. I've met Peter, I've seen his panels in person. He said he did not like his first 2 seasons, but he did like his 3rd, and if he knew that his 3rd season was going to be good, he would have had a 4th. I thought they could have had one more season.
It's funny because I've always heard that you took Pat Troutman's advice, and that was you do 3 seasons and you leave, so that you don't get stuck and typecast on a role or
Well, that's what he said.
I love Peter Davidson. He is a great, sweet doctor, but he's not the brightest one of the bunch.
It's funny you should say sweet, since that's something. Oh, look, it's Perry again. It's funny you should say sweet because that's exactly what Colin, in his opening moments of being the Doctor, described his previous person as sweet, and that was why he said he couldn't stand that particular persona. Speaking of people he can't stand, I don't like the 6th Doctor. Colin Baker is a cool guy. The 6th Doctor annoys me to no end for many reasons, although he does have Perry for most of that time.
With her 2 redeeming
Perry,
features.
yes, with a couple of good qualities about it. But yeah, I mean, just look at that.
Okay, I'm sorry, when Ray Charles looked at his outfit and said, "Dang, that's bright," we know that there's a problem here.
You're supposed to start with things you like.
No, I don't have to. I have to eventually say something I like, and trust me, it's difficult for him. But
I like the TARDIS.
Okay, we have to
I
remember one
like
thing,
the
though.
cereal.
This doctor right here, you know that lovely lady we've been admiring her attributes?
oh, her? Yes, yes.
One of his first acts as the Doctor was to try to throttle the living daylights out of him.
Hey, you.
Why?
Post-generation shock.
You can blame. He blames it on that. You can blame it on that. But
Have you heard her voice?
this is no. It's still.
This is just the Doctor showing that he can be a completely total psychopath.
May I just say that the son of Leslie, I suspect on that story because she didn't think the doctor was saving him and came back to Zion. I mean, he saved her life. and she can you regenerate back? Yeah, I'd be pretty pissed too.
As far as things I like the fact that deep inside, even though he is brash, he is abrasive, he is pompous, he likes the sound of his own voice, and I'm going to run out of descriptors in terms of negative in time. Somewhere deep inside there, he still has a great moral compass, and he recognizes right from wrong, and he calls out his own race on that. He makes a great speech towards the end of the Trial of the Time Lord about how he'd been out in the universe fighting all these horrible monsters, and he should have just stayed on Gallifrey because they were the most corrupt society he knew.
Really?
And it's a really good thing. I'm sorry that I just stole yours, Jay. I'm really sorry.
Mine.
But it was mine too.
I'll take it as a compliment.
Okay. Did you have anything else different to put in?
Like or dislike?
I know this was you like, but did you have a dislike?
Looks like you said he was way too arrogant, he lacked charisma, and he suffered from, I mean, most of his scripts sucked.
This is true. It really is not necessarily Colin's fault because it's John Nathan Turner's decisions for the most part. And if you listen to Colin in the Big Finish audios, he's playing the role, I think, a lot more like he wanted to play the role. He's not, he's much better. He's so much better than he was on TV. And I think there's a lot of decisions that were made for him that just he didn't have any particular say
I'm
over
still
them,
convinced
including
that
his
costume.
departure.
I'm still convinced that costume was the result of him pissing off the wardrobe department.
He wanted to wear all black. He was told that only villains wear all black. Hello, Ninth Doctor. Anyway. So now we get Sylvester. How many of you met Sylvester McCoy? Sylvester McCoy was here. Only one person. You poor people. Sylvester McCoy was here in Tulsa on 2 separate occasions. 3 years ago, 4 years ago. He was at a convention that we did, and then he's now an honorary citizen of Tulsa. Because he was made that by former Mayor Roger Randall. Sylvester is a unique individual, to say the least. He is okay. He's funny. He's acrobatic. He is incredibly entertaining. And I think my favorite thing about him is that he reinstalled a sense of mystery to the show, because we all basically knew what the Doctor was going to do and how he was going to do it, with minor tweaks and perks here. But for Sylvester, while he does go back to playing the omniscient God, it's okay for me with him because there's this whole question of exactly, they introduced this big thing called the Cardinal Master Plan, if you're into behind-the-scenes stuff for Doctor Who, and there's this big sense of mystery over really who he actually is. For the first time since the beginning of the show, we really begin to ponder who is the Doctor and why has he been doing all this stuff for such a long time.
What I love is that he's gone from playing Odin to being Loki. Yeah. He was manipulative, he was cunning, he was sneaky.
He has super powerful weapons like the Hand of Omega, just hanging around all this time that he never bothered to talk about.
But he was a good father figure.
See, it's not a father figure. It's a teacher-student relationship. More so, I think, than any other relationship that you have, with the possible exception of Joe. Even Joe is close to that too. But he and Ace are definitely teacher-student, which is why she calls him professor instead of anything else.
Yeah, when she says professor, it sounds an awful like dad.
Jay? Oh.
Okay, yeah, you already covered some of the things I was going to talk about. What I liked about his Doctor is one of the things anyway, was that there's so many things that he was going to bring to the role that they would have had if there was a fourth season. Like there are these hidden weapons, like the Hand of Omega here on Earth, and evidence was starting to point that he was much more involved with starting the whole Gallifreyan civilization. That was kind of covered in some of the audios and books. And they could have done so many cool things with it if he had another season.
He is the most sinister Doctor.
That's true.
And that is one thing I love and hate about Sylvester's Doctor. He's the most sinister. When Jill was talking about he tricked the Daleks into wiping out their home planet.
Yeah.
And then when he tried telling them, he was like, don't want to do this. He knew that they would not believe him. He knew that they would think that he was lying. So when they went to nuke the Earth with the Hand of Omega, the targeting was set to Skaro instead. And poof, no more Daleks for a while.
For a while, we're like intergalactic cockroaches.
Now, one of the problems entire 80s. One of the problems with Doctor Who that ultimately led to it being removed is that the creative people behind the show began to run into a little bit of a problem. They had established characters like Daleks and Cybermen and the Master and Align that they could use over and over again, which get tired, and then they try to come up with new ones, and you get characters like the Candyman.
I love the Candyman. He's
The
awesome.
Candyman is a giant sentient amount. He's cooler in the book, the novelization of the Happiness Patrol, than the actual TV show, but he's just a
In
freaking mountain of
concept-
candy.
In concept, he is awesome. In execution for the series,
He's creepy.
somebody needed to smack the props department hard.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to look at this and feel any sense of fear, threat, or anything whatsoever in regard, and that's true for a lot of the 80s style of monsters that you get. So then we were out without Doctor Who after from 1989 to 1996, and on May 14th, my birthday of 1996, I got the best birthday present I ever got, which was the return of Doctor Who to our screens, albeit so briefly with a TV movie made by American peoples or Canadian peoples.
The second Pretty Boy Doctor.
That is Paul McGann. Paul McGann is often overlooked because he only had this for such a long time until this past year. This was all we had of him visually on the screen. He's got a huge range of audios. That's where he makes his mark and learn who he really is as the Doctor. But visually, this is all we get for him until the Night of the Doctor special, which showed his regeneration. What do I like about Paul McGann? He's the most human. I said this about here. Well, yeah, I mean, truly, he's the most human. And I know you don't like that. And I don't like that aspect either. I agree, and I know you were going to talk about this too, that they incorporate the half-human aspect into this, which I think is just
What we affectionately refer to as bullcrap.
Yeah. But as far as his behavior patterns, he's so innocent, and he's so open to this whole world that he seems to have developed into, just coming out of that crypt, and this whole new persona just is so different to him for some reason than any of his previous regenerations. I love his TARDIS also. I like the fact that for what modern audiences, what people who were raised on New Who, accept this being the TARDIS as this huge thing. It wasn't. It was a tiny little room that you typically saw with all these roundels until you get to the TV movie, and you get this kind of Edwardian steampunky type of TARDIS interior, which I really liked, and I wish that they would have done a little bit more with.
Paul McGann was perfect. The Eighth Doctor was perfect. My problem was part of the storyline. Where the heck was Ace?
She's on Gallifrey being tutored to become this, well, she's either there or she's off becoming a badass killing Daleks, one of the two. But I think she's on Gallifrey. If you listen to Death Comes to Time, it tells us.
Yes, but they don't tell us
They don't
in his
tell us.
first appearance, where it would make sense because we had just lost the Seventh Doctor to regenerate the Eighth Doctor, and Ace, where's Ace? He doesn't even ask about Ace.
It may be a long time since he's been around.
Yeah.
Well, we know. Jay?
Okay, well, I liked how he had the it factor. He would have made a great Doctor.
He would.
And my dislike was being half human. That actually brought up an interesting discussion in the Doctor Who magazine. They asked, what other evidence has there been that the Doctor is half human? And they brought up some things from other episodes. And somebody put something interesting. They said none. You know, the special contact is part of the time trip to Master.
Right.
I like that answer.
The only thing that makes sense about him being half human is that it explains his affinity for Earth. But I think that you can get that affinity without the actual having to be half human in there. Speaking, if you're talking about dislikes, well, there's this.
Okay. Paul McGann's Doctor. I love Paul McGann's Doctor.
Universally, most people say that the best thing about the movie was Paul McGann himself.
Oh, yeah.
The plot and other aspects like this are really subpar.
Okay, how many people here know what a Dalek is? How many people here would actually trust a Dalek and said, oh, by the way, we just are executing your worst enemy besides us. Here's his ashes. Would you please take them home for us? I don't believe. What?
It was kind of explained in the Eighth Doctor's.
Although, may I say something real quick?
Wait,
I
wait,
Short on time, really.
I'm not saying it was a half-human thing.
Okay.
We'll get to it. We'll have time for these type of comments.
And we have the most scene-chewing
Oh
actor
my
ever
God.
created, running around, gnawing on scenery like it was going out of style.
Shatner?
Huge camp, put Shatner to shame in his style. It's just
Shatner called up and said, dude.
yeah. I want royalties for what you're doing, and you're embarrassing me in the style that you're doing it. Now, chronologically, from our perspective, you go from 8 to 9, but I'm going to do this internally from the doctor's perspective, and he goes from 8 to the War Doctor. I love the War Doctor. John Hurt is freaking amazing as the Doctor.
John Hurt should be at everything.
They should make a web series, they should make a whole season, they should do something to make more of him, and I'm pretty sure that they won't because John Hurt is an Academy Award-winning actor and therefore it would cost a bit too much money for them to do that. But man, for one story where initially when I heard the concept of what they were doing, I was so opposed to it. We're going to insert a doctor that's been forgotten in here. How do you do that? How do you forget a doctor? How do you mix up this numerical system? They did it, I didn't care. I didn't care because John Hurt was that good. So what I like about him is John freaking Hurt. What I dislike, we're not going to see him probably ever again.
Ditto. He said it all. The only thing I don't like is that we didn't get more.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
This is a universal opinion, right?
Maybe the ears won't be so conspicuous next time.
Well, no, they did kind of stick out. How many of you started with Christopher Eccleston? How many of you are new viewers? Okay, about half. That's about normal. You know,
That outfit looks familiar.
Christopher,
Colin said he wanted that.
yeah, he did. That's what he wanted to have, and yet he doesn't get it. Eccleston is probably, next to John Hurt, and Eccleston is probably like the best all-around actor to play the role. And I love the fact that once again, Doctor Who on the screen after an absence of almost 10 years from the movie to the time it comes back. But man, Eccleston's Doctor is so damaged. He is so suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And he is so difficult to relate to. In the first half, or 3/4 of his season, I really don't think he's fixed as the Doctor until The Empty Child, when the nanites fix everybody, including him. Because until that, he's messed up as a Doctor. He's really out there.
I love that. I love that we got to see the Doctor broken. Love that we got to see the Doctor after going through the trauma of a war. I'm a military brat. It was good to see them portray PTSD as close to accurately as you're ever going to see on a sci-fi show.
Okay. Jim.
And his fashion sense, you know?
What I liked about him was that I felt like he didn't really copy any other doctors.
That's a good point.
And one thing I wish they would have done with his episodes is, I think it was the first episode where they were talking, some guy was like, oh, here's where we spotted you on other places around the earth throughout time. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, other than being on the Titanic,
And the Kennedy's assassination.
yep. So we know the Doctor's been around before we get to see him. There's a gap that we do not know about between the War Doctor and Rose.
There may be, although theoretically if you watch Rose, when he disappears after inviting Rose in, theoretically he could go off and do a whole bunch of things in there. Because he can't,
Did I mention travels in time?
he can't have been the Doctor too long when we first see him because he looks in the mirror and checks out his ears as if he's seeing his face for one
Not
of the
too
first
bad.
times.
The
Yeah,
ears.
he's not familiar with himself, so he can't have been around too very long. I like that we get Captain Jack. I love Captain Jack. I think he's an awesome
Down, ladies,
character.
down. All gentlemen.
And down, Captain Jack. No, you want, okay, just stay where you are with your banana. Or your wood, or whatever. Wrong word. But yeah, I love him. I also dislike the fact that all of his stuff is set on or around Earth. I would like to see the Ninth Doctor dealing with actual foreign territory. And that's one of those decisions again that Russell T. Davies made, and I didn't particularly care for it as a whole. Then we get this.
Down, girls.
until John Hurt came around, of the new batch, David Tennant was my favorite one, and I will now defer to John Hurt. But of the regular doctors that we get multiple seasons of, like so many people, David is my favorite. Why? Because he carries a lot of Peter Davison qualities in my idea. He's youthful, but he looks young, but he's not, which was the problem that Peter had. He's supposed to be hundreds of years old, but nobody treats him seriously because he's young. And I like that struggle. I like the struggle that you get here with Tennant being youthful and having that problem in there. What do I dislike about it? Well, actually, sorry, the Peter Davison, I should have pulled that out there. What do I dislike? I dislike this.
I hate
I dislike the fact, I know fangirls are going to hate me now, but I dislike the fact that through all of David's time, and really Eccleston's as well, and to a small extent into Matt Smith's time, you had to have the pining relationship with the Doctor, the unrequited love. Oh my God, kill me now. Kill me now, please.
I'm sorry, I have to break that. Yes, we had that with Rose, who got a hand job.
What a great Holloway.
Family show, sir.
What a great Holloway.
We got the doctor and the doctor. Our medical student.
It starts with her.
I didn't like that
Yeah, we didn't like that either.
And then we get Donna, the most sarcastic companion ever.
I loved Donna. Donna was fantastic. Donna should have been with 9. They would have sassed the universe.
I think all,
Sorry, did we cover your likes and dislikes?
Okay, well, my 2 dislikes about him was the way he died. I thought was too much of a takeoff of Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
They just ripped it off.
And I thought,
I have been always chubby.
yeah,
Your doctor.
exactly.
and when they had him regenerate into himself, just pretend to him no
That's a
life. I
waste.
didn't like that.
Yeah, that was a waste just to get her the boyfriend that she wanted, which none of, well, I shouldn't say none of us, a bunch of us were like, don't care
Not
about
to
that.
mention the sheer vanity of why would I change? Look at me.
He was the most
All right,
he was
Colin.
absolutely the most vain doctor.
Does he not have right though?
Well, part of it is, in theory, when he was regenerating from 9 to 10, he was so focused on Rose and what she needed and what she liked and what she wanted, that he turned into a pretty boy.
I hate Rose.
Well, he took all of his regeneration energy, regenerated it into himself, and took the rest of it, threw it into his hand, which regenerated into another pretty boy.
Which led to many a narcissistic fan fiction, which some of you are too young for me to discuss.
Yes, and so we'll move on to Matt Smith.
The drunk giraffe!
Initially, I was really opposed to Matt Smith's casting because I looked at him and I didn't put a slide into this, but if you guys remember the first publicity slides that were put out of Matt Smith, he's all dressed in black, he's kind of got slick back hair, he's in a dark setting, and I looked at it and I went, holy crap,
It's the hipster
Edward.
doctor.
It's Edward from Twilight. And then I saw Karen Gillan, and I went, my God, it's Bella from Twilight. Are they really just going to go and do this? And thankfully they didn't. I like Matt's quirkiness. I think of all the doctors, potentially except for Tom, Matt is the most eccentric of them. I like the fact that they build in this family. Doctor Who is, for the RTD era, the Doctor is portrayed as the last, and he needs somebody to keep him sane, and he needs a family surrounding him. And here they give him a real family. I mean, he's got his in-laws, and ultimately, he doesn't realize it, but he's traveling with his in-laws for quite a long time. But they build this nice little family together for him. What don't I like about him? Hold on, because I didn't actually think about it. Let's go on, I'll come back to it, because I didn't think about what I didn't like about that.
I love so much about Matt Smith, but what I really love is Rory. This was one of the few times for any of the characters we actually got an extended arc of character growth. He went from Amy hiding behind Amy to I am a badass Roman centurion and you will tell me where my wife is.
Or else I'm unleashing my daughter.
I like Mickey.
Andrews.
Jen?
But better.
Okay,
Like Mickey, but better, yes, thank you.
okay, yeah, I thought he was funny. I never got bored watching this Doctor. My dislike was with his last episode. I thought it was written very lame. It's a lame way for him to go out. And this whole done something really interesting with that, like
They
built it up over a whole season.
They should have built this. I get the feeling that it was something that Stephen Moffat was debating on what he was going to do. I know that originally the War Doctor was not supposed to exist, that it was supposed to be Eccleston in that position. And then when Eccleston refused to come back to the show, they had to make this thing up. And so I think Moffat decided, well, we use up one more regeneration for that, we'll have to admit that that Handy is actually regeneration. So we're at the end of the cycle, and oops, we didn't really bother to build this up, but this is it, Matt, goodbye. And you're right, it's a wasted opportunity because he should have been pondering his demise, probably for this entire season. This is the end of my lifespan. I've burned through the regenerations. There is nothing coming back for me. How does a Time Lord prepare himself for ultimate death? We've only seen it one other time in the Twin Dilemma, and that was just handled as a side character, and nobody really cared. We care about the Doctor, and we don't get the chance to really appreciate the possibility that we won't see him anymore again.
But they did also let us know that there was going to be another Doctor in the previous stream because we've got the angriest eyebrows in the universe.
And how many of you like Peter Capaldi? I don't. I don't because he's mean. He is, in my opinion, very similar to Colin. He's mean, he's aggressive. I will say that I like his relationship with Clara better than I like 11 and Clara. The dynamic is very different, and I think I like that she puts him in his place, but that's only because I think that he needs to be put in his place because he lacks sympathy, I think. And I suppose it's maybe because he's trying to play it for that alien quality, but Tom Baker played an alien and he was very sympathetic, and it bothers me there.
I'm going to change your wording just a little
Okay,
bit.
all right.
I don't think he's lacking sympathy. I think he's more lacking empathy.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. Okay.
I actually kind of like the lack of humanity he shows a lot. This isn't just a Doctor who's an alien. This is a Doctor who is alien and who has been through traumas, and he's so much older than the Doctor has ever been before. He is quite literally the old man of the universe.
We're talking about 2,000 years?
2,000 some years. But that he's trying to reach back and reconnect with humanity through Clara, through the Paternoster gang, through the students at the school Clara works at. He's trying, he's putting effort into attempting to regain the humanity he's lost.
Okay. Jeff?
Are we on likes or dislikes?
Like,
What's up? Go both.
Okay, I do like the new intro, new credits.
I like that they were fan
That's
inspired.
the nicest thing you have to say about this document.
No, I like that they were fan inspired. I like the fact that the show acknowledges its fan base by doing that, because those credits were taken from somebody who just dummied up a bunch for YouTube, and then the producer said that's really good, which is makes it good.
Now I have a little more. I thought he had some episodes I didn't really care for, but he had some I liked, like Flatline. I thought that was creative. The TARDIS getting that small, the two-dimensional enemies of another dimension. And but overall, what I hate about him is, and this, I blame this on the writers, is the way he argues with his companions sometimes about really stupid stuff. And Clara often mouths off to him and makes him look stupid. He just kind of takes it, which I don't think any of the other doctors would have done. So I decided not to judge him on this season.
Yeah, I'm willing to look at the second season and hope that he will mellow, much like Colin mellowed in his second season. And I really hope he does, because he's difficult for me to attach to. I know that in there somewhere there's the Doctor that we know and love, but it's hiding pretty well.
They've left us. In reinvigorating the Doctor, giving him a new set of regenerations. How do we know they didn't maybe taint the mix a little bit? Maybe made him a little more. Maybe made him a little more Time Lord in their gift. Also, once again, this is probably the darkest the Doctor gets. But we also got mysteries with him, like,
Yes.
why the retread face? Because I mean, if you've watched Doctor Who, you've seen that face before, and you've seen it twice actually.
Yep.
We need to find out why you've seen that face before.
Theoretically, that'll be happening this season.
And then we have this doctor who lost his best friend. And I know you're going, he lost his best friend? He lost the master, who, for all intents and purposes, yes, they may have been arch rivals, but they were best friends. And there was still that aspect. Because the master never came out and killed the doctor. He had the opportunity to.
Well, he did it with Gopolis. I mean, not by shooting or anything, but he struggles with him on the top of the radio telescope. He can take the credit for killing, because he says the 5 doctors, killing you once was not enough for me. How thrilling to do it 3 times over.
Well, maybe some of his incarnations didn't want to as much.
But it's still the fact that he lost his best friend. That, and I'm sorry, I hate this incarnation of Doctor for the cheapest shot ever to get rid of the bad guy. Brigadier Cypherman. King. That's it. Game over. What? But Missy had it coming. She killed Osgood.
And I will say to you that Missy isn't done.
Oh, I know she's not, but I'm just saying.
Of course not.
Yeah.
She gets better
She does.
Yeah.
She'll be returning this season as well.
as a companion.
Theoretically, maybe from what I hear, potentially, or at least an increased role of some different nature. Okay, wow, it's 6:52. We have a lot to talk about. We have a table in the dealer's room. Tomorrow, if you guys are going to be here tomorrow, come by and see us. We'd love to talk more about these type of things with you guys. We appreciate you coming out here. Again, please check out our Facebook group, Tulsa Doctor Reviewing Society. Sign up, get aware of the meetings that we have and other conventional appearances we have. And
Okay, guys, I got one question for you guys.
Yep.
How did we do? Do you agree with us, or are we full of crap?
In the middle, in the middle.
Here's an applause all sorts.
So we're only half full of crap. Thank you.
I'll take it to be that half over there.
You may get a question. What happened to the film doctor?
I only stuck with the main 13.
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
canon.
when you
What
know-
about canon doctor?
With the canon doctors.
But
I
there
like
is,
that Peter Cushing was the doctor. I don't like that he's not officially counted as the doctor.
Exactly.
but there is a fan theory that Handy
Regenerates. Yeah, I saw
grows
that.
older and becomes that doctor, the human doctor. In that parallel world, that's how we get Peter Cushing as the doctor.
Meanwhile, I'm going, but he doesn't have Zeppelins.
Thanks for coming.
But they do have Led Zeppelin.
Which is close enough.
It's not Earth if they don't have Led Zeppelin.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Do we wish we had money for it?
Yes.
And then you find out, oh, Max Smith is coming.
And Gary Gillen and Billy Buck.
Oh, I know, right?
Well, even if I could afford to go to Dallas, I promised my niece I'd take her to Castle Muskogee.
It was a really good presentation, and then people asked me when I had questions.
Road
Wanted to go
tripping
back
across
forward
the
and tell me,
universe.
hey, it was
I'm gonna find reverse. We can find reverse.
It was really
Scrape him off, Jim.
very professional.
Oh, it's life, Jim, not Reno.
I love that I'm the only one that knows that song. Thank you. Listen, I can take that care of it.
Unrestricted enterprise, under
Card. The real guy. Wow. Start